Hello and welcome to Creative Conversations, a podcast that highlights the work of West Cork women in the arts. In this series, local artists and writers will share their creative journeys, their inspirations, and nuggets of wisdom for aspiring creatives. I hope you enjoy. In this first episode of Creative Conversations, debut novelist, Rosscarbery native Chloe Michelle Howarth tells us about her recently published novel, Sunburn, a depiction of first love, adolescent anxieties, and the realities of growing up in a small rural town. Sunburn tells the story of Lucy, a young girl who feels alienated from those around her. When her relationship with her best friend Susannah changes, Lucy's world changes too. In this conversation, Chloe tells us about her creative process, her inspiration for writing Sunburn, and the meaning behind the themes of her novel. Hi Chloe, how are you?
Hello, Eimear. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited.
Thank you for coming. So basically, we'll start off by kind of getting to know the author. So can you tell us a bit about yourself and your life growing up in beautiful Rosscarbery as well?
About me, God, I wouldn't know what to say. I'm 27. I just turned 27. I've been writing probably for about 10 years now. I started writing when I was a teenager. And I studied English literature in college. So it's always been like a really big interest of mine, reading and writing. Yeah, grew up in Rosscarbery with my parents and my two brothers. Literally have lived there sort of all my life until I went to college. And yeah, now I'm living in Brighton. I'm here with 2 years. So totally different to Ross, but I'm really loving it here.
Oh, brilliant. But you're near the sea, aren't you still? Kind of?
Yeah,
Yeah,
do you know
yeah.
what? It's such a nice thing. Like where I was in Ross, obviously anyone who knows Rosscarbery is next to the sea. When I went to Dublin and I was in Dunleary, which is by the sea, and now Brighton is also by the sea. So I seem to
That's
be
lovely.
making a theme for myself.
Yeah, I think people say that though, if you've lived near the sea, it's very hard to be in a landlocked place then. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite things to do when you do manage to get home from Brighton and get some time in West Cork?
Oh my God, do you know what? I love going home and taking it easy. I love, like, if I go home for a week, I'll plan maybe 1 or 2 social days. And the other 5 days, I'm staying up in the house, going on walks. Absolutely love going like long country walks. And it's so nice just seeing like, your friends from home who you mightn't get to see as often. Um, Little things like going out for a drink with my brothers, going out for meals and things. It's just so nice to catch up with people.
Yeah, 100%. And
Mm.
I like that you mentioned the walks because that kind of segues into uh, the inspiration for some of the kind of places that feature in your book. You say that they're kind of based off West Cork, so it's a nice segue into your book, Sunburn. So it's a fictional book about a girl named Lucy growing up in rural Ireland in the 1990s. So yeah, um, do you want to tell us kind of about that writing process when you're in lockdown and you decide to write this novel and kind of where the idea for it came from as well?
Mhm. Do you know what? I had the idea, I remember in January, just before lockdown. So I was living in Rosscarbery again after college. I'd come home and I was sort of already in like a lockdown state, I think. I was kind of spending just loads of time on my own anyway. And then, the rest of the world caught up. So I was already writing it um for maybe like 2-ish months before lockdown hit. And then like the positive that I took away from lockdown was just that I had so much time to write. Like it was, in some ways it was a blessing just because I had nothing but time and I was like, I can really commit myself to this. Um, but yeah, I would go on just like long, long walks. Do you remember you used to have your 2K radius? And I made the best of it. I was like just circling that same 2K every single day. Um, like in the middle of nowhere, not really meeting anyone or seeing anyone. Um, and I just loved it. I love this is so maybe silly, but like I love going on walks in the countryside and like looking at hedges. And I'm like, look at that hedge. And then I take out my notes app on my phone and I'm writing about the hedge. And I'm like, I need to kind of move on here. I'm not doing any steps. But really, like, yeah, just the nature around that area, because I was so immersed in it, I think it was just on my mind so much, and I found it a very, very easy thing to write about and describe. Um, yeah, and that was like a big inspiration, like I say, for like the setting and the village and everything else.
Yeah, I love that. It's definitely it's a great way of kind of even connecting to like your feelings and things to describe nature, I find. So it's nice that we all had like that
Yeah.
opportunity to have a bit more time outside, and there's nothing else to do. So it's great that you kind of made the most of
Mhm.
the time in a way. And that's kind of one of the themes in your book as well. Like throughout kind of is growing up in a rural area, and like I think you were going to read a passage as well about maybe how Lucy feels about her rural area, Crossmore. So if you wanted to read that now, you're more than welcome.
When I was young, I never imagined there might be anything beyond the horizon. This was the only sort of life that ever made sense to me. Now I wonder if I could go somewhere else, somewhere that is busy, without thorn bushes, with functioning train tracks, a place that does more than buzz off the ghost of once being important, as our village does. Imagine a place where I could scream and not be heard, and fail and not be seen. A place where my insignificance would not hurt, because everybody would be insignificant. That is not where I am. Here, every breath is heard, every evil thought is known. It might be beautiful to look at, but it's abysmal to exist in, a sweet, sad dream. And while I could think of a million places that I would rather be, I fear I will never have the nerve to leave. I fear that Crossmore is too deep in me, and I would not know how to exist elsewhere.
I love that passage so much. Um, and kind of I just love how you're able to intertwine how she's feeling inside with all of her kind of complex emotions, um, and describe it in a really accessible way for readers as well. So yeah, I wanted to ask you then about the other themes. So there's growing up gay in rural Ireland, and kind of just what Lucy's facing in school and from things that she's hearing, and how important it is to highlight that especially in the 1990s, it's a different culture, and like generational ways of talking about things. But yeah, if you could touch on that, we'd love to hear your opinion um on what Lucy was feeling at this time and how you got that across so clearly.
Probably important to say that everyone would have a different experience growing up queer, really wherever you are. But even in, somewhere like West Cork, everyone's experience would be different and everyone's family situation would be different, which definitely would play a part into, your development. But yeah, little things like her friends' attitudes, is, I think it's pretty true to life. And I think it's one of those things that you might notice more if you are queer, or you kind of feel like you might be different in some way. You'll notice small things that people say more than they might if they were just like a throwaway comment. Like for example, there's parts in the book where like Lucy's friends might say things like, "Oh, that's so gay," or they'll throw around words, like they'll just throw around words like dyke, for example. And I think people, you just say these things and you don't think twice about it unless you're somebody who it actually affects, which I do think is a generational thing. Like I know that when I was a teenager, that was such a thing to say. We'd all say like, "Oh my God, that's so gay," and you'd never say that now. Like you wouldn't dream of it. But I do just think it's a generational thing, and I think that's why people are kind of relating to it, because especially people like my age will remember that kind of mindset and attitude. And now that we've grown up a bit, we know like that's not on. You can't really say that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if teenagers are still talking like that. There's every chance that they are. Um, but yeah, I just think I tried to make it as kind of true to my own experience as possible in like what I remember speaking like as a teenager, and like things that I would say and things that I would hear, and yeah, trying to like ground it in reality as much as possible.
Yeah, and I suppose that was normalized in a way, that kind of language. So I know that you said as well, like it's not just a book for someone who's grown up queer in a small area. There's something for everyone really in this book. And I couldn't agree more, because like you touch on the dynamics in school and how the change kind of from primary to secondary school, and um girls and boys relationships and kind of gender stereotypes and things as well. So yeah, I wanted to ask you then a bit about two of the characters and kind of Lucy's relationship with them based off
Mhm.
that as well. So there's Martin, who's kind of been in her life forever, a family friend, a lovely guy. And then there's
Mhm.
Susannah, who's in her friend group in school. And I just wanted to ask you about the importance of those characters and kind of how you formed them, how they came to be, I suppose.
I think in ways they're very different characters, and in ways they're very similar. Essentially, for anyone who hasn't read it, Lucy wants to be with Susannah, but feels like she should be with Martin. Um, and I think the ways in which they're similar is that they both do have excellent qualities um, that Lucy needs in her life. You know, I think that she kind of sees things in them that she feels that she's lacking. You, you know, they're kind of both, they're confident people, they're happy people, they're secure people, and she doesn't have that really at all in herself. And so I think that she definitely benefits from having both of them in her life, because these things that, you know, she's noticing like where she's lacking, and she's, you know, working on herself and getting towards that place where they are. The problem is really, as much as Martin is wonderful and he's so, so good to her, and, you know, he could kind of give her a fabulous life, he's just not the person that she really, really wants to be with. And the person that she really wants to be with is Susannah. So like throughout the book, the descriptions of Martin are very like, he's so lovely, he's such a nice guy, but they're very grounded in reality. They're very down to earth, matter of fact. She can be very harsh on him. Whereas the descriptions of Susannah are, she's an angel sent from heaven, she's going to save my life, she's the best thing that, you know, like they're so dramatic and so over the top, um because of the way that she feels about Susannah versus the way she feels about Martin. Sometimes I think she can get a bit fed up with him.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I love that description as well, that you know it's so kind of flowery and over the top and passionate how she describes Susanna as opposed to kind of lovely stable Martin that's just
Yeah.
always there. So yeah, it's nice. No, but you have a really, you have a flair for descriptions, I feel, and that kind of just takes us back to the themes again of school. I loved how you described the atmosphere and kind of the different ways school is grouped in a way, like girl groups, the dynamics. Something that you keep touching on throughout the book is how they think they're a nice group of girls, and I just found that very interesting, like the group mentality and kind of not stepping out of the box. So yeah, I wanted
Mm.
to ask you about how you came to write about school in that way, and the different gender stereotypes as well, and just kind of being put in a box and having to conform to different groups that you find yourself in your school years, I suppose.
I suppose like school for a lot of people can be about, it's kind of just survival, you know. Some people I think really, really enjoy school. Other people are like, I just need to get through this, and I'll just align myself with whoever I need to in order to kind of get through the day, get through the week, get through the year. Um, and it can be very, very clicky, like school can be. And I think, yeah, like Lucy's group, she's very much like, oh, well, we're such nice girls, you know. And then over the course of the book, she begins to realize, as she realizes that she doesn't necessarily fit in with her group of friends, she starts to see that they're potentially not that nice a group of people. Um, but of course, who thinks, yeah, me and my friends are so mean? No one thinks that. You always think you're on the right side, and you know. Um, but yeah, I kind of remember my school days. I felt like it was very, not necessarily in a bad way, but I did feel it was very clicky. Like there was always kind of groups, and then in different years you'd even see the different groups, even just in small things like everyone used to sit in the same places every day with their friends, you know, and you kind of wouldn't dream of going and sitting somewhere else with your friends because you're sitting in someone else's area. Like it's like really small unwritten things like that. But that I think I would imagine that everyone sort of had that in their adolescence, you know, that like really kind of clicky, groupy sort of scenario in school. Even like when I think back to school, I'm like, I was so nice and I was friends with everyone, but I'm sure if you asked other people, they'd be like, that's not true.
I love it.
But you know, you
Yeah.
think you're the problem, do you?
Definitely. But yeah, I love that. And I think I wish when I was younger that there was a book like that where you could like read it, especially if you felt different in a way, that you could read it and maybe understand that it's not just you that feels all this grouping, because it's not something that's talked about when you're in school. It's just the done
Yeah.
thing. You just conform to what you see, and survival, as you said, of the fittest, really. So yeah, I really I think that'll be great for younger readers that are in secondary school and maybe having a hard time, because they might relate to Lucy or someone else in the group. Or even, I know that you were on about in the book as well, you kind of touched off on how the group nearly revolves around the boys group in a way. And
Mhm.
we were talking about this previously, that maybe the boys kind of revolve around the girls as well. So it's interesting how that starts kind of when you go to secondary school, especially. So yeah, I wanted to ask you about that as well, if you wanted to kind of explain that to people, why you wanted to bring in that kind of the new dynamic secondary school brings to both, to all genders, I suppose, really.
I think it's such a it happens to everyone, doesn't it? Like if you went to what's the word? Single sex primary school.
Oh yeah, like so there's mixed and there's, yeah, like all girls or all boys, I suppose.
Yeah. If you
Yeah.
went to like an all girls school or an all boys school, and then suddenly you're in a mixed secondary school, it is like, oh my God, all these people are here now and we're going to interact with them every day and see them every day. And what do they think of me? And what do I think of them? And what do we think of each other? Like, it's just a natural curiosity, you know. And especially at that young age when you're like 12, 13, you're trying to figure out, as much as you're trying to figure yourself out, you're trying to size everyone else up as well and kind of get the sauce of everyone. So I do think it's just like a natural curiosity that people have. And yeah, I kind of really wanted to play it up because for Lucy, she's realizing she's trying to kind of figure out, well, why is it that everyone else is obsessed with the boys and I'm not? I just can't see what's so interesting about them. She kind of can't relate to her friends on that level. And so she's having to pretend and she's having to lie about it. And that's making her feel that bit more alien and separate to everyone else. And I do think, yeah, when you're that age, it's all about like, you know, when you're kind of 13, 14, 15, it's like, who's got a boyfriend and who's kissing who and who's had their first kiss. And like, it's a huge part of life at that age. So yeah, I think by including it a lot, it kind of amplifies how different she is to everyone else, or at least how different she feels that she is.
Yeah, 100%, because that can be really intense when you're growing up, that new kind of who's kissing who, or you know, who's
Yeah.
with who. But then adding, it was really interesting to get Lucy's perspective, because she has the added challenge of having to pretend that she's keeping up with all of this as well, and that she cares, even though
Mhm.
she's fighting internally with her own kind of thoughts and feelings. So I thought that was really interesting to get across, and it'll definitely, you know, help people who might be in that situation in school at the moment, which is great. um
Hopefully.
yeah. So that kind of ties into shame, and I really wanted to bring this up because I think, especially in like 90s and obviously earlier than that, um, Ireland carries a lot of shame.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that are taboo, just, you know, for a lot of different reasons, I suppose. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you about shame in this way, because like Lucy couldn't accept herself because the environment she was in wasn't accepting of her.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you kind of about shame as a theme, and how you found bringing that in. Was that challenging to kind of get across to the readers?
Well, unfortunately, if you're writing about Ireland, I think it's very easy to bring shame in as a topic. Like it's not necessarily difficult to weave into a story. Um, because I think so for Lucy, her thing is her sexuality. That's what she's kind of feeling this guilt and shame about. But especially for, I mean, for everyone, like there's 101 different reasons why you might feel shame in a community like Crossmore. Um, especially as a woman, like there's an awful lot of things, if you're going against the grain at all, you'll definitely feel it. I did think it was important to bring up because I think it adds, it kind of brings like a level of reality to the story. And also you might sort of start to understand why Lucy feels the jeopardy that she does. It's not just that she's like, well, I don't want to be different. She doesn't want to be different because she knows, you know, it's the shame of it. Like she'll kind of mortify her family. She feels like she won't be able to stay in the village. She'll lose people in her life. And those are obviously very heavy things for a teenager to be dealing with. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing to write about as well. Like somebody trying to grapple with shame. And for Lucy as well, I mean, it is definitely part of her community, but it's not like she's really disclosed her sexuality to anyone. So a lot of it is shame that she's putting on herself, and it's very internalized, and it's sort of, I think she's kind of putting, she's assuming people are going to think certain things of her. And so because it all happens in her head, you can make it so heightened and so dramatic at times.
Yeah.
And then at other times she can completely repress it, you know?
It's like she's seeing real consequences though in her head. Like she's seeing, I suppose, the way people are talking about people who are queer, or the way her mom treats her, for instance, when she, you know, finds out and completely kind of
Yeah.
denies it. So I suppose she has those real consequences as well as the internalized shame. So she's really in a horrible place.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really difficult. So I think, yeah, it's really important that you did, you know, bring that in and kind of validate that for people who might be going through it as well. But yeah, so I suppose this is a very open-ended, broad question, but what do you hope to achieve with this book?
Well, it's a funny thing because I didn't write it with any audience in mind. I didn't really write it expecting anyone was going to read it. So I didn't go into it with like hopes and aspirations, you know. But now I think I would be very happy if I suppose if people read it and just got something out of it, if anyone was to relate to it at all, it would be fabulous. Like as much as it's a queer story, and I do think queer people will relate to it, it's also just, it's really a story about adolescence and kind of finding yourself. And so, yeah, I think anyone who has kind of come through their teenage years, or like are currently going through their teenage years, I think would hopefully get something out of it and feel like they'd something to relate to. I think that'd be fabulous.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't doubt that that's what's going to happen. Like, you know, it's a really moving book. But just speaking about the book again and kind of the actual process of writing it, I wanted to ask you about your creative process, whether you're kind of a sporadic writer or very kind of stringent planner. So yeah, what's your creative process, Chloe?
I try to be very organized, and I try to say to myself, right, okay, I'm going to write for an hour every day or an hour every evening or whenever it is. But obviously, like life gets in the way. You can't always do that. I find myself writing at like random times, like kind of the middle of the night normally is when I'm like, oh, sure, I'll just do a quick hour now, you know, and I'll be fine. I don't need to sleep, you know. But a lot of what I do, you know, if I find I haven't been actually sitting at the laptop and like writing pages, I always have my notes on my phone, and that's always getting filled with like things I see or things I hear or just anything at all that I like that inspires me. And then I end up with sort of a really long page in my notes app full of just little sentences. And so I'll just kind of weave them in. And that's sort of how I ended up writing Sunburn. I had like probably 1,000 nice sentences that I was like, okay, I can
Love
structure
that.
these into a book, you know. So I think that's one thing that I definitely keep on top of, because I find it's very easy to pick up inspiration, but it's just not necessarily easy to find the time to structure it, you know. but I do try to be strict on myself and get a certain amount of hours in, where I can.
I just love the kind of sentences that you find though, like little moments of inspiration. That's great
Yeah,
that you kind of note them down, and that would be a great tip for someone that maybe is really daunted by the prospect of writing something, even if it is like a short story or a poem or something.
Mhm.
If they feel inspired when they're out and about on a walk or in a cafe or by a conversation, that they could just write a nice sentence down and it might turn into something.
Exactly. Yeah, I find that's what happens. Like once I have one sentence, it's very easy to turn it into a paragraph. And then
Hmm.
the next time you go back to that paragraph, it'll kind of double in length. And yeah, but it's just making sure you write it down when you hear it. Because, sometimes you'd be falling asleep and you think of something and it's like, oh, if I say it 3 times, I'll remember it tomorrow. And then I never ever do. So
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sure you actually write it down
I'm
when you
very
have it.
guilty. Yeah, I'm guilty of that myself. So you've mentioned kind of, your degree tied into English and you've had writing as part of your life for forever, really. So is there any kind of authors or writers that inspire you and your work?
I really love Nabokov. I think his writing is like top tier. Like he's so, so, so descriptive and so poetic, and like nothing else I've read before. I just think like everything that I've read I haven't read everything that he's written, but everything that I have read is just like it just knocks me for six. I'm always like, oh, wow, wow, wow. And I like reread and reread. I just think he's like endlessly inspiring.
I love
Um,
it.
and I also really love Jeffrey Eugenides. He writes from a male point of view, or sometimes he'll write from a female and then male point of view. Like you often get the male, and I just really like the way that he writes women from a male point of view, because I think it's honest without being that like toxic. It's a nice point of view for like the male perspective on women. It's not like aggressive or anything, but it is honest, if that makes
Okay.
sense. I think he's very interesting. I would encourage people to pick up one of his
Definitely.
books.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
The
I think he's
foundation.
wonderful.
And then I suppose tying into this podcast as well, are there any women in the arts in West Cork that inspire you?
There are. So basically, I love any art really that's to do with Irish culture, or folklore or anything like that. I really, really love. Um, and I recently came across this girl on Instagram. Her name is Aoife Cawley, and she is a visual artist, and she makes the most amazing pieces. She made a St. Bridget's cloak. I don't know if you've seen it. But it's gorgeous. It has like neon colors of like Celtic designs, and she made these amazing, I think they're acetate crosses, like Bridget's crosses.
Yeah.
They're so, so cool. She recently did for the Barbie movie, she did like GAA Barbie and Irish dancing Barbie. And I just
I
think
love
she's
it.
super cool, like the Irish girl in the arts.
Yeah,
I really, really love her stuff. She's Aoife Cawley Art on Instagram. People should go and
lovely.
look at her.
We'll have to check
Yeah,
her out. Yeah.
she's
Uh,
super cool. I
yeah.
don't
So
know her, but I really like her stuff.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's great. Um, and then I suppose where can people find your book and you?
I'm on Instagram, which is at Chloe Michelle H. I'm always kind of popping up there, sharing little book things. And the book you can buy it's available in Waterstones, and also any like local bookshop you can pop in and request it. It's available in Kerr's Bookshop in Clonakilty for anyone who's in West Cork. But yeah, wherever you are, just request it in your local bookshop and they'll get it in for you.
Lovely. Yeah, because I think there's something for everyone to learn from this book. So it's amazing. And then I just kind of have some quick fire questions. Just just maybe random questions that people can get to know the author a bit more and just yeah. So this is my favorite question to ask anyone ever.
Mhm.
Who or what makes you laugh, crack up the most?
My brothers make me laugh so much. I have an older brother and a younger brother, and they're so funny. I they're literally the funniest people. I love it. Like, it's rare that we're all together, but when we are, I look forward to it so much because I'm like, I know I'll just be dying laughing. And like, I can't contribute to the conversation when I'm talking to them, even because I'm just laughing so much. Yeah, they really crack me up. I think they're so funny.
I love that. Yeah, there's something about family humor as well that no one else will understand, which is
Yeah.
it's really special. And then what other hobbies do you have or other ways of kind of unwinding after stressful times?
I love cooking. Absolutely love it. I never really did until sort of, I guess when I moved to Brighton, I kind of got into it. And now I'm like, I literally will plan my whole day around cooking. Like, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, it's lasagna tonight. And I will like plan the whole day around it. I'll warn everyone who I live with. I'm like, don't eat a big lunch. I'm cooking tonight. I
Oh,
love
you
cooking.
cook for your housemates as well. That's so nice.
Yeah, well, they have no choice. I'm like, it's happening. I'm making a full whatever I'm making, so you have to eat it. So I love cooking, and I love getting out in nature. I love going on walks. I love running. Yeah, I like a bit of me time. I love kind of just closing the bedroom door, quick scroll on the phone, a little kind of time to decompress. I do like that as well.
Yeah, that's needed. Um,
Mm.
and then, yeah, any more books in the pipeline or kind of works that we should expect from you, Chloe?
Yes, I'm working on something else at the moment. It's different to Sunburn in that it's not really like an adolescent coming of age thing this time. But it's definitely a very Irish story again. Um, so that's what I'm working on it at the moment.
Love it. Very good. Look forward to reading it. And then I suppose finally, if you had one piece of advice, maybe you could tell your younger self, what would it be?
Um, I would say if you are like a younger person in a place like West Cork, and you might think like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here and go and be my own person. That's fabulous, and you will do it, and you'll love it. But don't be in a huge rush. I look back and think, God, I kind of wish I had made the best of it. Living where I did, it's such a fabulous place. It's such an inspirational place with such a fantastic art scene. So, you can look forward to what is to come, but don't disregard the moment that you're in. Um, yeah, and I think if people are looking to get into the arts, I suppose you just have to do it, don't you? You can do it privately, um, until you kind of build up your confidence, but like no one's going to do it for you. So you have to, if you have an idea, you have to jump on it and make the best of it and just do it to the best of your ability and enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks so much, Chloe.
Thank you for having me. This has been fabulous.
Really enjoyed speaking with you, and I'm sure anyone listening to this will learn a lot, and there's a lot to be learned from the book as well. So yeah, thanks so much for your time, and best of luck
Thank
with
you.
everything.
Thanks a million. I really appreciate all your kind words about the book, and I love that you enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Southern Stars Creative Conversations podcast series. This episode was produced and presented by Eimear O'Dwyer. For more episodes like this, make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening, and check out our southernstar.ie/podcasts for our other series, including Southern Star editor Siobhan Cronin's From A to C series, which focuses on sea swimming in West Cork and beyond.